Well, the whole reason for doing this is just to, get some stories about my dad and my family. What you guys were, what it was like for you guys to grow up in Bound Brook together. Because I don't really know very much about that. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do this, just for fun. That's all.
And Joe, do you have some idea what you might want to do with this when it's all done?
Maybe just leave it to my son, or show my sister, or show your kids. Maybe we'll have a party and we'll just show it. It'll be fun.
Great.
What do you think?
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Sound good to you?
Family reunion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That takes care of the business.
Right.
Okay.
Good.
So, you can put those papers away and...
Oh, you don't want these back?
No.
Here, okay.
No.
So maybe Mary wants to start with what you were already talking to Joe about.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah.
I can't tell you much about your grandpa, who was my father, except that he came from a place called Recalmuto in Sicily.
Oh, he was Sicilian.
He
Okay.
was one of 13 children.
Whoa.
And I don't know which one he was, but he is one of the twins.
Oh, he's a twin?
He's a twin.
Wow.
And so you can look for a twin maybe when your son gets married.
Mm-hmm.
Delores' daughter has twins, but I wasn't so lucky. All I had was one child, so he couldn't be a twin. And then Grandpa, do you want to know how he met Mom?
Sure. Now, do you know where Grandma was from?
My mother?
Yeah.
My mother came from Sicily also.
Mm-hmm.
From, I think it's Palermo.
Did they come together?
No.
No, they didn't come
So
together.
did they meet here?
They met in New York City.
Oh, okay.
And I'd like to tell you how they met.
Okay, great.
Because it's quite a little story.
Cool.
But anyway, she came with her father, which was my grandfather. And they were here about 3 years. And then Grandma and Uncle Tony and Uncle Frank came. And Aunt Josie at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole family was here.
So why don't you tell us who were the brothers and sisters again? It was Aunt Josie, right? Was Grandma's sister, right?
Aunt Josie and was my mother's sister.
Right, and we had Uncle Tony.
Uncle Frank.
And Uncle Frank,
was
right?
the brother. And Uncle Tony was also the brother.
Okay.
And we lived in Bound Brook, New Jersey, all together until my father, who was a carpenter, bought some property on Wheatland Avenue and built a house. And we moved into that house.
Oh, I thought he owned a gas station.
And then that came later.
Oh, okay.
And then he built another house right next to it. And Grandma and Grandpa, my mother's mother and father, lived with us for several years before they built their own house on the street right next to ours.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a carpenter, by the way, so he built both of these houses and made up the blueprints and everything himself, even though he wasn't educated as a carpenter, but working as a carpenter, he got all this information and went into business with a man called Bourdon. And he was a relative of my mother's mother.
Mm-hmm.
So that made him a relative of Mom, too.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a fallout, so he left the, if you want to, it wasn't really a company, it was just a friendship deal. You know, they were in business together.
So they were building houses.
So he left them and decided he would go into a different kind of business. So he built another little building on Talmadge Avenue and decided to sell gas. He wanted a gas station. So he had this gas station and sold little things like candy and bread and groceries to people around.
Mm-hmm.
And he,
Should I interject?
Yeah, yes, I would love you to. Go ahead.
do
Okay.
you
Go
want
ahead.
to know all this?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, but I mean, maybe I can add a little.
Yeah, add a
to
little
what
bit.
you're saying, or
Of course, of course. That's why I love that. Go ahead.
And my mother worked in a dress factory in town. At the same time, my father had this little gas station.
Mm-hmm.
So our livelihood was, pretty well.
So back then you had
And-
two working parents.
And we were doing quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to know something about the children,
Yeah.
I was the firstborn.
Mm-hmm.
Then came Angie,
Mm-hmm.
whose name, by the way, was Angelina, but we called her Angela.
Mm-hmm.
She had it legally changed to Angela.
She did?
Yeah, Angela. Then
From what?
came Aurora,
Right.
and then came Joe Grillo, your dad,
Mm-hmm.
and then came Delores.
10 years after Joe.
I was 18 years old when she was born.
Okay.
So, then my father had the gas station for quite a few years, and we'd help every now and then. You should see me pumping gas.
Yeah, we all did.
Yeah, we all did, I guess.
You all pump gas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary, how old were you when your dad moved from carpentry to building the gas station?
I was in my early teens,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I have some pictures at the gas pumps, pumping gas. So he must have had it for a good
A long time at least, yeah.
20, maybe 20, 25 years.
Because
or
I
something
even
like
worked there
that.
when I was in high school. I went to the
Well,
store.
you was a
pumped gas.
baby, and I used to carry you back and forth
Yeah,
to
but
the
Pop
house.
still had it while I was in high school. He still
Yeah,
had
and
the
he
gas
still had it
station.
when you were in high school.
Mhm.
So,
Did he end up selling it eventually?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's because a doctor told him that he had a heart problem and
yes.
he had to get rid of it. Dr. Edelberg told him that.
I
so-
know. He
So
didn't
he
be-
sold it
He
and,
didn't believe it, but he did have it.
yeah.
So Mary, in the first part of your life, up until your teens, your dad was the carpenter. He was
Yes,
right.
well, up until I was about 13 or 14, something like that, in my early teens, yeah.
Did you tell him he built both our houses?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What was your dad like?
My dad was a good man, but he was a very strict person. He was the boss. And if you want anything, you asked him. And if he decided you could have it or it was good for you, he'd say yes, otherwise no. And he never changed his mind.
How would he say no?
No,
No, just
you
like
don't do it. Period.
And you
He
think
was
my
the-
dad was exactly like him? He was
He
just
was
like my dad?
that way with my mother. And I'm
Mhm.
sure you find your father was the same way.
Hmm. My dad was very strict too.
Yeah, now, I went to high school I was a junior, no, freshman, sophomore. I was a sophomore when he decided I wasn't getting the right kind of education. He didn't want his girls to work in factories or anything like that, so he sent me to business school.
Oh.
So,
Did you want to go?
at the age, yes and no. And even if I didn't want to go, I'd have to go anyway, because he said so.
So you didn't finish high school. You
I
went
did
right to
not
you went
finish
right
high
to you went right to business school.
I went right to business school and graduated from Drake's College and got a job at a place called Samoset Laundry. It was a laundry and dry cleaning company. And I started out as just a office worker,
Mm-hmm.
and then graduated into the bookkeeping job and,
Mhm.
and was the main bookkeeper for 17 years.
Wow.
And
Now, how about my dad? He didn't finish high school.
now
What happened to him?
Oh my God.
Can you tell me that story? What happened to
Let me
him?
tell you about your father. He was, a little bit of a disappointment.
He was a devil.
He was a devil?
He was a devil.
A
Devilish
disappointment
kid.
to our father because he expected great things out of his son. Well, his son had a disposition just like his father. So he didn't get very far. He only went to the 6th grade. But he was not a stupid kid. He
Well, what happened in 6th grade?
he was kicked out of every school in town.
He was?
Oh, really?
Oh my God!
Every school.
I never knew
Even
that.
the Catholic schools, they would take him.
Real? They wouldn't take him?
No, because he told his sister to go to hell one day. He was something.
Really?
Then
You
he
got a kick
wanted-
out of him, didn't you?
And then he wanted a car.
Wait a minute, didn't he jump
Wait,
out
he
of a
couldn't have
window?
wanted a car in 6th grade.
No.
No.
Didn't he jump out of a window in the school one time? I heard that story. Where he got mad at the teacher and jumped out the window.
Oh, I
of the
didn't
school,
hear
and
that
then he
one.
never
No,
went back.
I didn't hear that, but I know he told the nun to go to hell. He didn't want to do what she wanted him to do, so that
So,
was,
if he quit school at 6th grade, what did he do in 7th grade? What
he
did
didn't go to school after that.
What did he do all day long?
We got a tutor for him, and the tutor quit too. He just was not interested in school.
He
Wow.
worked at the gas station.
He worked at the gas station with my dad, and you know, when he was in 6th grade, how old could he have been now? I can't remember. But
About 14.
about
No, about
14,
12.
something
14,
like
something
that.
like that.
Anyway, he worked. We got a tutor for him because he had to be in school, and he just wouldn't go to school. Nobody would have him.
Wow.
So,
What was he doing in school? Just
so
being a
he-
wild man?
I don't know. He was
Probably a
stubborn.
clown, too.
If the teacher told him to do this and he didn't want to do it, he just wouldn't do it.
Wow.
Was he a clown around the house?
And
I think so. I think he was kind of clownish, wasn't he, Joe? He used to make us laugh.
yeah, he was.
Yeah.
But my father, I think, was too strict with him for one thing, because he was very strict with us. You know, we had to do what he said or else.
I remember seeing my father chase him around the store one time because he was after him, and Joe was running away from him. My father picked up a loaf of bread and threw it at him.
And he was so bad.
How was your dad's aim?
I'm sorry?
How was his aim? Did he get him?
Oh, probably, as I recall.
And one day, he was not allowed to smoke cigarettes, and he was smoking. And my father had to go someplace and left him in charge of the gas station. Well, he had spilled some gas on his clothes, and he was smoking, and somebody said, "Here comes your old man." So he took the cigarette, didn't know what to do with it, stuck it in his pocket, and he got on fire.
Oh!
And he got burned. And
See
we
how
had-
we hear different stories. I heard that he got on fire because he had those long matches and he went like this to light the match on his clothes.
Oh,
And he
well.
caught on fire.
Well,
See?
I heard different. I
That's
heard
how
he-
it is. See how things change?
So I heard he was smoking a cigarette and he farted.
Oh, that sounds like it.
Hey, what?
Then he farted. That caused an explosion.
Bad boy. Anyway, he was in the hospital, and
When it happened, my mother ripped his pants off him, and she was cutting away the burnt flesh on
yeah.
his leg,
Wow.
and sent him home because we lived on Wheatland Avenue.
yeah.
And he was walking home in his underwear because she had cut his clothes off of him, and people were going, "Oh, you know, he's in his underwear."
I didn't remember that.
So that's what happened
Yeah.
there.
Wow.
But anyway,
You remember the scars on his leg, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so he was a devil, but anyway, and then he wanted a car. He got a job at 16 in some factory in South Plainfield, and they were working with some kind of motors, I guess, or whatever, and he got his finger caught in one of the motors, and that's the reason he had one finger without.
See, I heard a
tip.
different story about that.
Yeah.
What did you hear?
I heard that he was changing a blade on his jigsaw and somebody turned on. That's what he told me anyway.
Yeah,
He
I
could-
heard that
he-
too.
You heard that too?
Well,
He was
yeah.
changing the blade on a jigsaw and somebody turned the machine on.
Oh, is that the way?
That's what I heard,
Yeah,
but he
well,
he had two
could
fingers
be.
missing.
But all I
That
know
was a
is,
different one, that's
Yeah.
a different thing.
but anyway, he got rid of the tip of one of his fingers.
Yeah.
And then while he was there, he wanted a car, and Pop said, no, you can't have a car, because you gotta have insurance, you gotta have this, you gotta have that, and you don't have enough money. He says, well, I got a job, I can do it. He said, no, I can't give you any money to buy a car. And he was so unhappy that I loaned him the money,
Really?
because I was working at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he bought a little coupe, one of these little coupes at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also gave him some money for the insurance, because Pop said, you can't have that car without insurance, because he wasn't gonna be liable, you know?
Mhm.
Kid was only, what, 16 years old, 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have the car very long, because it wasn't a very good
He
car.
painted it orange. Remember?
My dad did?
Orange car.
My dad painted his car orange?
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
So,
Do you know he used to paint all his tools orange?
Is that right? Oh, see,
Yeah,
it's a carryover.
his handle was tangerine when he on the CB,
Uh-huh,
and every tool that he owned, my father owned a million tools.
uh-huh.
Every tool that he owned, he had painted orange, so in case somebody
Yeah.
stole it, he would
You
know.
would know. Oh.
yeah. Well, anyway, you wanted to know mostly about your father.
No, I'll hear any stories you have. Tell me about Annie
Have you
Engine.
heard some of these stories?
No.
No?
You have another one about Dad?
Let's see, I had another one in mind. Let's see, what was it? Oh, so when he got rid of his car, I had a car, because I was driving back and forth to Plainfield all the
Mhm.
time. And once in a while, if he asked me for the car, I'd let him have it, but mostly I said, no, it's my car, and you know, you're too rough with the car, and you don't take care of it, and you're too young anyway. Oh, no, I'm not. Somehow or other, he got my car keys, and had duplicates made of them. At nighttime, when we were all asleep, he would go and get my car, and wherever he went, I don't know, but he would use my car and bring it back. So I would think, you know, gee, I had more gas than this yesterday, I wonder what happened to it. Well, I finally discovered he was taking my car out while we were sleeping.
Where was he going?
Oh, pick up the guys and, you know.
He used to go roller skating a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he liked roller skating, and I remember that because he used to take me on occasion.
Oh, did
And I
he?
was so, it was when he first got out of the Army,
Oh,
and I thought
yeah.
that was great. Oh, you didn't know about the Army?
Yeah.
We didn't get to that part yet.
No, we didn't get, well, anyway,
Before we do, tell me a little bit about your mom. What's your mom like?
my mom was a gentle
She was the peacemaker in the house.
peacemaker, is right. And always, we used to call her the Florence Nightingale of the street, because if anything happens, they'd always go to Mom Grillo. She knew what to do. And one thing about my mother, and she was a peacemaker. She always would stick up for us if she could, although my father didn't want to hear anything. And but he was good to her in a way that he never used his hands on her. You know, like some of these people that are that way will slap a person if they talk back to them. Well, I think my mother learned not to talk back to him. But he never touched her as far as that goes. He was good to her, and he was a good provider. But getting away from Joe Grillo, he got into the Army, and
Did that straighten him out?
that straightened him
Yeah.
out. He was stationed in India.
The India-Burma area.
Yeah, India-Burma area. And when he came back a man, you know, quiet, you know, joyful, jolly, but I mean, not a troublemaker.
And we all loved him so much because he was the only boy in the
Yeah.
family. There were the four
Yeah.
girls and him.
Well, I always, whatever I could do for him, I used to do, you know, because I figured that he wasn't getting his due really from my father. Because my father.
Well, he was a wise
A
guy.
little disappointed. He
Yeah.
loved him, but he was just a little disappointed. Because he thought he was going to be something real big, you know, the only boy, and he had that in mind for his son. He would have sent him.
Well,
to
he turned out all
college,
right
I'm
in
sure.
the end, didn't he?
Hmm?
I said he turned out all right
Absolutely.
Oh, yes, he did.
He turned
Oh.
out all right, and his children
He turned
turned out just
out-
wonderful.
in the end.
Better than all right.
You're a diplomat.
Yeah.
No, it's the truth. You know, when I used to go to your house and see how strict he was with the kids,
Uh-huh.
I used to say, Joe, you know, and he'd say, I raised my kids my way, you know. I'd say, yeah, but you know, you don't have to be so strict. And as I got older and realized that whatever he did a good job because you guys are great.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Great
you.
kids.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so
right.
much.
He did a good
And
job.
very family oriented, which I like a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that.
Well, my mom had something to do with that.
Yeah, that, oh, yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Right.
Yes.
Tell me about Aunt Angie.
Aunt Angie.
As a kid, what was Aunt Angie like?
Aunt Angie, she was a crybaby. She was. You would look at her cockeyed or, you know, cross-eyed, and she'd start to bawl. She was very,
Really?
very, very sensitive.
She's
Although
a sweetheart.
She
though.
wasn't as she got older though,
No.
She wasn't what?
as sensitive.
No.
I'm surprised to hear you say that.
We were at Aunt Angie. Aunt Angie graduated from high school.
Did everyone graduate from high school?
No.
And
Who-
she what?
No, I'm
No.
just curious. Did everyone
Angie graduated and I graduated,
Yeah.
that's all.
Really?
Yeah, and she.
Well, you graduated from college, though, didn't you?
Yeah.
Angie went
Yeah.
to Trenton
I went to
State.
Drake's College.
Right. Angie went to Trenton State.
Yeah, but
College.
and she,
Yeah.
she
Now that was
graduated-
kind of unusual back then to have a.
well,
college
she
education.
She graduated in 1934 from high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went on to Trenton State College, which was only 3 buildings at that time. It
Right.
was, you know, a small college.
Yeah, and it was a 3-year college too. I don't think
No,
it
it
was
was
4.
4. It was 4.
Was
but,
it 4?
Yeah,
I
because
think
she went
so.
as to become a teacher.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
And she lived at Aunt Josie's house,
Mhm.
who lived in Trenton at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the reason that she was allowed to go, because
She can live there.
she could live there rather inexpensively.
Right.
Right,
Mhm.
right. So that's what she did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after that, she became a teacher.
She met Audrey, who was a
Audrey.
principal of one of the schools that she was teaching in.
He was the acting principal of Findern School.
Okay.
Findern School is no longer there. It is now the People's Center or something, you know,
Mhm.
for senior citizens.
Yeah.
But he was there as the acting
Yeah.
principal.
Well, they they got married. They were married during the war,
Yeah, he
And-
yeah.
and he was inducted, and he was a lieutenant in the army. And Angie went into the wax.
No, first they got married when he was in the service.
Yeah.
And then she moved with him. So she
Talking about
lived-
Uncle Pete now, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just like that.
Yeah.
With her first husband, no, not Uncle Pete, this is her first
This was her
husband.
Oh, her first husband
First
died,
husband.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
What was his name?
Aubrey Kemper.
Aubrey Kemper?
Mm-hmm.
And he died during World War II?
Yeah.
He died in Luxembourg. He
Oh.
died of an accident.
He drowned.
He drowned?
He was driving in a Jeep, and I
It
don't
was
know
rainy,
whether.
it was a muddy
Yeah,
road.
Yeah, but we don't know whether I don't think it was like a bomb or anything. I think he just skidded. The Jeep turned over and pinned him under a little stream,
Ugh.
right? It was only a couple feet of water, probably not more than 2 feet, but he
Wow.
couldn't get out.
Oh, what a
And
shame.
the strange part of it is, he was a swimming instructor.
Oh.
You know, in the summers. In the summers, he
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and he died of drowning.
Wow.
Yeah. And so what happened was, when he went overseas, that's when Angie joined the wax.
That's what I say.
Yeah, when he went overseas, that's when she joined. Yeah. So,
She joined.
And Aunt Mary, your husband was in the service too, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in the Air Corps.
In the Air Corps?
He was a
the tail gunner.
tail gunner.
Wow. During World War II?
in World War II, 3 years. And
Where did he serve?
in England, his base was in England. And he flew, I have all that papers someplace. He flew 34 missions.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
I think the name of his airplane was Hell's Bell, wasn't it?
Hell's Bells, yeah.
So how long were you guys married?
28 years.
20 years.
When I got married, Joe Grillo was my best man. And,
Oh, really? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
And then right after I got married, Aurora got married first. No, when she got married next. I think she was married right after I was married.
Yeah. It was right after the war, when the men were all coming out of
Yeah.
service,
And
and that's
then-
when they got married.
And then Joe Grillo met your mother at somebody else's wedding, I think.
Right, I heard about that.
Yeah.
At the Far Hills Inn, I
That,
heard.
that was Frank, Joe Fry's brother's wedding.
Oh,
It was
okay.
Henry Fry.
Is that where they
Yeah,
met?
he married the Basilone girl from Raritan.
Oh,
Yeah. And
the
that's-
famous Basilone?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
the sister.
Oh,
How about, tell us a story about Aunt Aurora.
yeah, Aurora.
What was Aunt Aurora like as a kid?
Well, you didn't finish Angie.
Okay, let's
And
keep,
then
all right,
she-
all right, stick with Angie, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I mean, because after her husband died, and
Mm-hmm.
she stayed in the service,
Right,
right?
She met
And that's when
Pete.
she met Pete, a couple of years afterwards out in Battle Creek, Michigan.
okay.
And they started to date, and then they got married. And then she went overseas and lived in Europe, in Germany, with him for, geez, I don't know how many years, about 3 or 4 years. And that was right after World War II.
Okay.
So they were in Germany when they were just reconstructing it at the time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
How did she get to Battle Creek, Michigan? What was that about?
Oh, she was working as a physical therapist
in the Army Hospital.
in a veterans
Detroit.
hospital in
Detroit.
Battle Creek, Michigan.
Oh, was it Battle Creek?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's how she met him. And then they got married, and of course they moved on, and they had 2 children, and then he stayed in service, and her husband became, what did he die? Was he a major when he finally got out of service?
Yeah, he was a
Yeah,
major.
not a major.
But, yeah, and he got out, and they moved to Tupelo because that's where they offered him a job as a what do they call these offices where you go in and sign up to be in the Army?
Enlisting?
Recruiting?
Recruiting office.
Recruiting?
Recruiting office, yeah. And so he worked in that for several years, and they finally became used to the city where they lived, the little town where they lived, so they stayed there. Now, Aurora, do you want to know anything else about Angie?
No, that's enough. I guess I kind of finished her off.
Aurora was a very shy, timid crybaby. We just couldn't keep her happy. And she lost the sight of one eye, and it moved over to the side, and she was cross-eyed. So when she went to school, they used to call her cross-eyed Rora.
Oh.
And
How did
it
that
got-
happen, do you know?
And you know how kids are.
I
Anyway,
don't know.
she got to the point where she wouldn't go back to school again. And she also left school in the 6th grade. She would not go back to school, no matter what you did. Now, in spite of all that, she turned out to be pretty good, you know, with her life.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a easy life. She met Joe at somebody's wedding too, I guess it was. One of her girlfriends got married, and she went to the wedding and met Joe Fry, and they started to go together, and they got married.
Excuse me, before that though, before Aurora met her husband,
Yeah.
she stayed home. You know, she
Oh,
she
yeah.
stayed home, and she
Yeah.
used to take care of the house while my mother went to work
Yeah.
and everybody else went to
We were
work.
all working.
Yeah, and when I was a kid, she used to take care of me too.
Yeah.
Right? And once the war broke out, then she was able to get a job in
Big like.
Yeah, no, first it was Deals, I think. She worked in
No,
Deals
that
or
was last,
Bakelite?
that was
Okay.
after that.
For the war effort, you know, the women, that's when the women went to work. Before
Mhm.
that, women didn't work in those
Rosie the
places.
Riveter.
Right,
What
exactly.
did she do?
I'm sorry?
What did she do?
In Deals, she ran a
Lift a cart, what do you call it?
a lifter, I guess.
Forklift?
Forklift.
She ran a forklift?
Yeah,
Yeah, she ran that for what, several years.
and I
3 or
don't know
4
what she did
years.
in Bakelite.
And then when Bakelite quit the, doing work for the Army, then she went to Deals, who was still an Army producer. I don't know what they were making, but anyway, she worked at Deals for a while. And in spite of the fact that she never had an education, she was making more money than I did. And I worked in an office.
Let me just understand something. She was a forklift operator, but she only had one eye that worked.
Oh, yeah, oh, I gotta tell you about that too, I forgot about that. So, one day, when Aurora was about 16 years old, maybe 17, we missed her, couldn't find her in the house, couldn't find her any place. And that night, we get a call from a cousin in New York City that Aurora had taken a train and gone to New York to see a doctor who was going to fix her eye. Well, my mother got on the train and went to New York to pick her up and talked to the doctor, and the doctor said that he couldn't give her a sight back, but he could straighten the eye for her. So they made an appointment and they had her eye fixed. So she couldn't see out of that eye, but it was not crooked anymore.
Wow.
And that's when Aurora rather, became a real girl, a real, teenager.
Hmm.
But she did it all by herself, which I wouldn't do it.
So that's when she started to date and things like that?
So that's when, she started to go out and she she met these people working too during
Right.
the war, in the war plant.
It was Ask Aurora, she had it. Whatever it was, she had.
Yeah, it's true. Aunt Aurora was a collector. She was also a painter.
Yes.
Pretty talented painter.
Well, all of them did. All of them were. Mary was, Angie was, and Aurora. They all.
See that painting on the wall over there and this one over here? I did those.
Which one? This one?
Yeah. And the other one,
Beautiful.
the other little one.
Well,
This
you
one
get
here?
Captures of them,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
Well, I gave most of them away. I did a lot of them. I did some that I wish I had kept.
Mhm.
But Aurora was the worst driver in the world, maybe because of, not only because of her bad eyesight, but she just couldn't coordinate her body, I think, or something. But she was determined to drive. She took lessons from one of these, like Taggart driving.
Mm-hmm.
I think she failed her test 3 times or 4 times.
Oh,
And more.
6 times.
Oh,
she
and
went.
finally,
6 times?
after paying for all those lessons, they passed her, right?
It's like SpongeBob.
And she was the worst driver. She was even worse than my father, and he was a bad driver.
Hey, what was this? I heard there was a story about one time Grandpop was going somewhere and he left Grandma. And,
Oh, yeah.
What's that
yeah,
story?
Yeah,
We'll tell you about
Tellini's.
that, yeah.
what's that story? Who's got that story? Uh-oh.
Excuse me.
But that's still amazing. If she was such a bad driver, yet she could drive a forklift.
She was
Okay.
so bad
We're still, come on, you can come up.
that she backed up one day
Take your time.
and hit a car.
Okay.
And this woman got out and said, "Can't you see? My God, we were right in front of you." He said, "Why can't you drive the way you're supposed to drive?" And she looked at her, she says, "Hey, you saw me coming, why didn't you stop?" That's the kind of a driver she was.
Well, what was the story about Grandma getting left behind?
Oh, my mother and father were friends with these people that lived up on
In Somerville, the
Somerville,
Tavaminis.
right up
Up
here.
Adamsville Road in Somerville.
And it was winter time, And they used to visit all the time. So they were up there, and it was time to go home. And my father said, you know, before it gets too late, we better get going. So my mother says, okay. So they came out of the house.
There was snow on
And
the
there was
ground.
snow and ice on the ground. And he couldn't get the car started,
He couldn't get it out.
or
'cause-
couldn't get it out of
because the
where,
snow.
I guess it was trapped in the snow bank. So my mother was out with the other people pushing the car, you know? So he got it started and he took off.
He
Left my mother
behind.
waving, you know, wait for me, you know? Anyway, he
But
did,
the reason was, when my father drove, he never took his eyes off, he was focused and stayed that way, you know, he never looked to the side or anything like that. So he didn't realize that his wife wasn't in the car. So he said.
How
he's
long did it
driving-
take him to realize?
Well, we got all the way to Bound
Oh, you were in the car too?
No, I
No.
heard about it.
All right.
Yeah, he got all the way to Boundbrook to Thompson Avenue, and he says,
no,
Annie.
no. He got home and right to the
let me
garage.
tell this lie. So he said, he got to Talmadge Avenue, and he says, Annie, how do you think Anzano looked? And she didn't answer him. So he goes, Annie, like this, and he feels that she's not there. So he stopped the car and he looks, oh my God, then he realizes that he left her behind. So he had to go all the way back to get her.
Yeah, well, I heard the story different. I heard he got right back to the garage and he says, Annie, open the garage door, please. Annie, open the garage door. There was no Annie there. That's how I heard it, so I don't know who was right.
See?
But anyway,
When they tell it, it always changes.
yeah.
That's the beauty
But
of it.
anyway, it was funny.
We do know for a fact.
Did they laugh about it?
Oh, yeah, I mean, did they laugh about it? Everybody laughed about it for years later. Even our friends and
It was
relatives.
a joke, really.
Mhm.
It was
Yes.
funny. So, anyway.
How about Aunt Dee? Why don't we tell something about
Oh.
you, Aunt Dee?
Oh, if you want to, but I
Sure.
was gonna say, I have a few little bits of information.
Okay, let's hear it.
About our family.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
Starting with my grandmother, which
Well,
would be
nobody
your
wants-
great-grandmother.
Okay.
Well, why don't you wait and finish our family first and then go on to that?
All right.
Wouldn't you say?
That'd be fine. Whatever you,
Yeah,
whatever
now
you want to
about you.
Yeah, well, I can't tell you too much about me when I was a kid, because I don't remember too much.
Well,
Except
she was a little spoiled brat.
I was 10 years after your father.
do. Right.
And she
So you
was
were the
18
baby.
years old.
I was-
And she was all mad at my mother because
Yeah.
my mother was pregnant and she didn't know about it until a neighbor told her.
Ooh.
Right? That's what you told me?
Yeah, right. And the neighbor told me, and I thought, my God, why can't they tell me? And then I got mad to say, I'm 18 years old and people are going to say that Mrs. Grillo didn't have that baby. I bet you Mary had that baby.
Oh, really?
That's what I was thinking. And that's what I told my mother.
Wow.
And my mother said, no, no, no. And I said, yes, yes, yes. You know how people are around here. I said, you're too old to have a baby at this
How
time.
old was she when she had you?
I was 18.
Now, how old was Grandma?
Something, 40.
Grandma was 44.
44.
40 something,
Yeah.
in her 40s.
But anyway, when she went to the hospital to have it, I wouldn't even go to see it.
Why
I
not?
didn't want to see the brat, you know. But when she came home and they had her in the crib, when nobody was looking, I'd take a sneaky peek at her, you know. And finally I got to the point where she was really my baby because I used to buy her clothes and take care of her and do, you know.
In other words, she spoils me. She said,
Did you ever drop her on her head?
No,
No?
no. No, and you know, the funny thing it was, somebody was kidnapped at that time.
oh, the Lindbergh baby.
The Lindbergh baby, I guess it
Mhm.
was, yeah.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh my God, every night we'd eat at my father's gas station because he had made a back room with a kitchen and a sort of a living room. And we'd eat our supper there and then take off and go home on Wheatland Avenue, which was a little farther away. And I always had to carry this baby And I thought, gee, I wonder if the cops see me, they're gonna stop thinking I have the Lindbergh baby. Well,
You had quite an imagination, didn't you?
oh yeah, but anyway, they didn't. And she grew up to be a pretty nice kid.
I went to Lamont School in Bound Brook, which is still there, by the way. And after that, I went to the high school, for grammar school and high school at Bound Brook High, and graduated in 1948. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to teach, and then I thought I was interested in Spanish, and I was interested in music, but I just didn't
You
know
were?
what
What
to
did you
do.
play?
I tried to play the piano.
Oh,
I
that's
wasn't
where
very
Buddy gets
good.
it from, I guess.
Maybe, but I wasn't very good, so I gave it up. But anyway, one of my teachers talked me into becoming a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, no, she talked me out of becoming a teacher, because at that time, teachers were hardly making any money. So instead, I decided to go to a school in New York. I went to the Latin American Institute and took a course in as a diplomatic secretary.
Mm-hmm.
So I graduated from there after 2 years. I guess that was in 1950. And then I got a job in New York City, and I worked for the Waterman Pen Company, and then after that for a freight forwarder, and then for a Cuban steamship line.
Wow.
And that's when I met the man of my dreams. God.
Where did you meet your husband?
Well, I knew him. I knew him from years and years ago. As a kid, we grew up together.
Oh, really?
I mean, I guess I knew him like when I was in the 2nd grade, and then after that we lost contact
Uh-huh.
because they moved to South Bound Brook. And then I met
That's
him.
far away, isn't it?
Yeah, but well, for us,
Yeah, right.
kids,
Back then it
you
was,
know,
right? Yeah.
You know, and I met him when he got out of service
Uh-huh.
again. That's when I met him.
And he looked good in the uniform, didn't he?
I'm sorry.
He looked good in the uniform.
No. He was out of service by then.
Oh.
Afterwards, he served in Korea, and then he got out. But he couldn't find a job, and we started going together. We wanted to get married, and since he didn't really have a job, it was kind of a recession then.
Uh-huh.
He decided to go back into the service, and then we'd get married.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what he did. He went into the Army, then we got married. And I guess we were married for like 9 months, and then I got pregnant.
Mhm.
And then I had Helen.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in North Carolina. And shortly after that...
Oh, he was in the service when you
Yeah,
mentioned.
he
Oh,
stayed
okay.
in the service. Then we went to Germany and lived there for 3.5 years.
Oh, I
and
didn't even know that.
And that's when Babe and Ronnie and Monica were born in Germany. Every year, keep them pregnant and barefoot or something. So then he decided that he was going to get out of service after, I think he listed for 2 tours. And he got out, and then we lived with his mother for a while, and that was a tragedy.
Why is that?
She was terrible. She was impossible to live with, so I finally had to leave there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just started having one kid after another, ended up with 8.
8.
8, yeah. And that was about it. And after 21 years of marriage, I said, that's enough. So I left. I left him with all the kids. I left him. That was the only way I could get away. And
Oh,
then
really?
I got a lawyer, and then,
Well, how old were the children at that time?
I think Helen was already in college. And I guess Maria was the baby then, and I think she must have been about, I don't know, 10 years old maybe.
Wow, and that's when you were living in Bound Brook?
Yep. Yeah.
So where did you go?
I lived with your father. I went to your house for a while. I escaped.
I don't remember you
escaped.
living with us. When did you live with us?
This was back in 1974.
You lived with
You-
Uncle
you were
Frank
the-
for a while, too.
Do you remember your father had this little Nash? I think it was a Nash car. Nah.
74?
Yeah.
I graduated high school in 75.
I don't think you
And
lived with Joe.
you never lived
Uncle
with
Frank.
us.
Now, I lived with your father for about a week, and he let me use his car. And I was working for Capel at the time.
What year was this?
well, let me see, I think, wait a minute, 70, 74, 75, maybe it was 1975.
That's the year I graduated high school.
Well,
I
it was in October, maybe you were already gone to college?
no, well, it could have been.
Yeah, I think
Well,
so.
That could have very well been.
Sure, because
But
this
just
was
a
in
week.
Maybe it was 76.
76 is when I got my divorce. I left him in 75.
It had to be right when I went to college.
It
then.
is, because it was in October, it was on Halloween night, 65, it was
Wow.
October the 31st.
I never knew that. See
I
all the
stayed-
stuff you learn, you don't even know.
And I stayed at your house for about a week because I needed a place to stay.
Right.
You know, I stayed there a week, and I was going from place to place because my
Looking
ex-husband was looking for me. He told your
He didn't know you
father-
were there?
If he told your father if I ever find her, she's dead. You know,
Ah!
so your father
I think
says,
he would've
"Then
been dead."
He said, yeah, that's what he said. He said, well, then you'll be dead too. But anyway, I stayed with your father for a week. I stayed at the Capels for 2 weeks. I stayed at Millie's house for 1 week, and then I went to stay with Uncle Frank DeBlanco.
Oh yeah, man.
Because his wife had passed away, and he
Uh-huh.
was alone, and I stayed there for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so.
Hmm.
And little by little, my kids started to come and stay with me. You know, first Ronnie, and then Monica,
Hmm.
because he was abusive to them,
Yeah.
and they came to stay with me. He never found out where I was, though.
Good.
Yeah,
And
well,
so,
that's
and,
good.
and, and
Kids
all
were
the
good
time,
about that.
I had a lawyer, and we were going through the divorce proceedings.
Hmm.
So, 2 days in court for the divorce. It was- He was acting as his own lawyer, and you know.
Oh really?
Oh,
Oh,
he
that
liked
that
to
was
talk.
that was brilliant.
Oh, yeah, and he liked to talk, so
Oh,
it
yeah.
took two days in court. So that was it.
I
And then
think-
I got,
It's Buddy.
Buddy.
Here he is.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Good.
Come on in.
Come on in, bud.
What's happening?
All right.
Got that
How's
where we
everything
want
been?
it?
Good.
Yeah,
Look
good.
up, Bob, we just-
What the heck's
And,
going on?
oh,
You
we're
shoot-
we're having
Shoot
a,
video. We're getting some
Oh.
stories. Have a
No
seat.
kidding.
Come on.
Oh, you doing something with the family tree or something?
Yeah, just hanging out. You know, just getting
Hey,
some
how are
stories.
you?
I'm Ron.
Hey, Ron, how are you? So, what, did you bring some information about the family tree,
Not
or you
really,
just now
no.
like creating some kind of thing?
No, we're not creating anything. We're just getting stories.
Oh,
You got any stories you want to
yeah,
tell?
right.
In fact, we're on your mother, and we're just talking about your father. You got any good stories about your father?
Not offhand, but I'm sure I can come up.
good to see you.
Oh, we got some wonderful stories about Mr. G. Like the time he used to take us out on maneuvers in the middle of the night down by the river at 3 o'clock in the morning.
What do you mean maneuvers?
He used to take us out on army maneuvers.
What?
In the morning?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
down by
outta
the
here.
river to get us ready for the communists in World War III.
No way!
Yes, yes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and shoot us, teach us how to shoot like high-powered rifles and how to
He had rifles?
live off the land and stuff like that. Yeah.
You're kidding me.
No.
No, that was
He
it.
used
He
to
was
put us on
nuts.
post, like all of us out there. He'd wake us up in the middle of the night, 3 in the morning, sneak us into the van, get down because the enemy's watching, you know, sneak us into the van, drive us down to the river, have us like crawling, you know, doing the crawl on the hands and knees.
Oh my God.
And then
Yeah.
What's that about?
we'd like pretend we'd set up camp,
Oh,
and
oh,
then
it's
people
by
would
the
have to
father.
keep guard while the others would, you know, rest and sleep. And, you know.
Were you in the house at that time? Or were you?
I think she
I
used to
was
go
there.
with us.
You would go with him?
Sometimes I was forced to, but sometimes I would have a little baby and I could stay home.
There's a
and take
chair
care.
there if you want
Oh
to
my
turn
God.
around.
What he would do would make us march like single file, but apart, like 10 or 20 feet apart, so the enemy couldn't take us all out at the same time. Like it was all these army tactics that he learned from the army.
Oh my God.
And then, you know, so we had to
So he was worried about the communists invading.
Right.
Yeah, our Third World War, just preparing us
Third
for,
World War.
you know, for Thunderdome.
Wow. That's wild.
I think
Yeah,
you
well,
ought to make a real movie out of this.
Yeah, he was touched. Say the least. So then we'd get back in the van about 5 in the morning and get back to bed, maybe get back to bed for an hour, get up and go to school, and then we'd be falling asleep on our desk, and the teacher would be like, why are you guys sleeping in class? But we couldn't tell because our crazy father took us out to the river, go on maneuvers, so we used to just keep it low key, you know?
Oh man.
You never told me about that.
That's wild.
So,
Wow. I had no idea. I just found out some stuff about my dad today. It was amazing.
oh, you did?
Oh yeah.
Oh, we could
Which
tell you a
was?
lot about him. He came after me. He was going to kill me.
Who was?
Right,
And
right.
it was my fault, and he was coming out, and he was going to kill me.
His father was going to kill you?
Yeah.
He came after me with a gun.
For what reason?
Hmm?
Why did he do that?
Because I left him.
Because I made her leave.
Oh,
I left
really?
him,
He was
and I went
blaming
to stay
you
with my
for you
mother.
leaving.
Yeah.
I went
Wow.
to stay with my mother and she was there
Wow.
all the time.
So he was blaming me for everything.
She had him arrested
Oh, you did?
by and his uncle. Don's uncle was the arresting officer. So he didn't stay in jail for
Uncle
very
John,
long.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you know
Uncle
what?
John.
The father came
Andy,
to
could you
me-
move over a little bit? Because I can't get you in the field anymore.
Oh, you want to get me
Because,
in the
yeah,
The father
there you go.
came
That's
to me
good.
and said, well, he said, why don't you drop it? He doesn't mean anything by it. He said, he'll be all right. I looked at him and I said, and if you keep talking to me, I'll have you arrested too. So the old man left.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing.
Some good
I
stuff.
remember as a kid going to your house for Christmas and stuff. It was fun. We used to always have a good time over there.
Uh-huh.
I remember the train in the backyard cruising
Oh,
by.
yes, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
okay,
well, we
don't worry.
lived with the train in the backyard and Main Street in the front yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were right between them. Yeah, and the kids used to love to throw rocks at the trains as they were going by, and bottles on the tracks till they hear them crack. Oh, and how about the time that your father had us digging in the backyard?
You know, it's funny, I
In
just
the
thought of
winter.
that. Yeah.
In the
In the
winter?
winter.
Doing what?
Well,
If you can't burn it, you bury it.
yeah, he wanted to extend the backyard a little out to the railroad
Yeah.
tracks. So what we did, we started digging a ditch, you know, further back to the tracks, which was railroad property, and then we'd fill in the dirt in our yard where it was low. So being it was low, we needed some fill. So when we threw out our old dressers and mattresses and stuff, he'd make us bury them in the yard, break them up and bury them. And then at one point there was like the ground would be springing because there was a mattress. It was hilarious.
And
yeah.
then one time, it was in winter time, and Mikey Allen came. He was a neighbor kid, and he was helping dig. And he was very allergic to poison oak or poison ivy. And when they were digging, even though it was winter, they got the roots of the poison. And this poor
Oh,
kid
yeah.
swelled up
Yeah.
and had to go to the hospital. He had poison oak so bad, and the doctor couldn't understand how you get poison oak in the middle of winter. And that's where he got it from us. Terrible.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So I got
amazing.
another good one,
Oh,
right?
you got a good one?
My father set up a boxing rink in our backyard,
Oh.
right? And then have my sisters and I box all the neighborhood kids,
Ah.
all the hoodlums.
Uh-huh.
So he called the biggest kids in the neighborhood and make us box them,
Why?
you know, to teach us how to be tough. So he had my sisters in there beating up some of the other punk kids in the neighborhood. They were
Uh-huh.
beating him up. And then he'd set us up with the biggest kids in the neighborhood that would knock us out. And he'd be like, get up and fight that kid, you know what I mean? And just really have us, like get knocked out a little bit here and there, see some stars, and that was his fun for the day.
Was he in some kind of like experimental thing in the army or something? Did they do like drug testing on him or something?
That's Agent Orange, I think.
Actually, if he weren't crazy, it would have been quite an interesting life, quite a nice life, because he did have a lot of good ideas, but he was absolutely nuts.
Well, he had ideas? What kind of ideas?
Oh, all kinds. I mean, like he wanted to have a baseball team. Remember, he wanted to have
Softball
the whole
team, yeah.
family would be a team, softball team, and he even had us go to play.
Well, you had 9. How many are on the baseball
8.
team?
Well,
There's-
we had
there's-
8.
Yeah. Well, no,
And-
there's 8 kids and 2
There was
parents.
10 of us. That's how many are on a softball team. You have a
Yeah.
short fielder.
Right.
Yeah, and he'd have us play other teams too. He had us out to Annandale playing the prisoners one time. Female prisoners,
Yeah.
right?
And the male prisoners. I think we went to the other
Okay.
Annandale
yeah,
too.
yeah.
The male
And
prisoners.
then he'd critique afterwards to find out what you did wrong and all that kind of stuff. And that was the thing, but he forced everybody to do things they didn't want to do, and that was the bad part of it, right? It was he made Babe run cross country, right? Babe had boobs out to here, and when she was running, she was misery, but she had to run because that's what he wanted. He wanted her to run cross country.
So check this one out. So
Okay.
one time my friend talks me into going to a Boy Scout meeting. He
Uh-huh.
goes, oh, come check out this Boy Scout meeting. Mr. Nabielny's running it. It's real cool. We just go crazy and party and go out on camping trips and, you know, just
Yeah,
go
right,
crazy, right?
right.
So I'm like, nah, Boy Scouts is lame. He goes, no, believe me, you got to check this out. Trust me. So I went. We had a blast. We went out to the hall out of Lamont School. We're playing basketball. We're just going crazy. And then they're ready to take us on a camping trip. And they're telling me the last time how much fun they had and everything, all the hoodlums in the neighborhood, right? So I go home and tell my dad I joined the Boy Scouts with Mr. Nabielny as the Scoutmaster. He goes, oh, I know him. I'm going to talk to him. I want to be a Scoutmaster. Next thing you know, he was the Scoutmaster, took over everything, put everything like in regiment, like Army style, took us out camping at these places, and then he'd like abuse Lenny the cop and Eddie Pinhead, all these kids in the neighborhood. He'd make them, he'd say, like, we'd be canoeing, and he'd go, oh, bend over and get that piece of paper in the water, because we don't like litter bugs. And then when you bend over to get it, he'd whack you with a paddle, knock you into the water. He was just crazy.
Nice guy.
Yeah, very nice guy. So he would make these guys, earn these merit badges, right, for the Boy Scouts. So one of them was the mile swim.
Right,
So
I
he'd
remember
make
that.
these guys swim across the lake, and he'd be paddling a canoe next to him. The kid would be swimming. He'd be timing them and cheering them on, pepping them on. Come on, go. You're at 4 minutes and 25 seconds. You can make it. You know, you can beat the last time of the last guy and this and that. So this one kid couldn't make it hardly, right? He was just half drowned. He couldn't swim that well. He's trying to hold on to the canoe and everything. My father's whacking his hands with the paddle. Like, you're gonna swim that mile. The kid's like half drowning.
Oh my God.
Just like so abusive, man. He was crazy. And then he decided at one point, okay, well, I'm going to take you. He started getting into the historical Civil War stuff. So he goes, all right, I'm going to take you on a trail, the Old New York Trail that Washington and General Lafayette walked from New York to Philadelphia. It's like, 100 miles or so. So we're going to walk that this weekend. So he took us all on this trip. We walked about 30 miles a day, I guess. It took us about 3 days, like a long weekend, like a 3 or 4 day weekend. Walking like 25, 30 miles a day. Walking through
With
the towns.
the whole family?
No, this was the Boy
Oh,
Scouts.
the Boy Scouts.
The Boy Scouts. So,
They did it?
for the guys in the neighborhood, it was fun because they're partying and this and that. My father would whack them with a stick once in a while. But for us, we were like, you're getting in the front of the line. No fussing around for you guys. He'd oh man, it was like drill sergeant, man. Me and my brother hated it.
Wow. How's Francis doing?
He's doing good.
Yeah?
He's in Colorado. Been married to his wife now, I think over 15 years.
Yeah.
He's doing good.
Good.
School
Yeah.
teacher.
He's
Catholic
teaching school?
Yeah.
What's he teaching? Theology?
Latin,
He's teaching Latin?
Latin and English.
Nice.
He teaches theology at night to a college class.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, teaches a college course.
This
at night.
man here used to be a theologian, right?
No
The-
kidding.
did I pronounce that correctly? Right, Ron?
Close enough.
He was a
kidding.
theologian.
Theologian. There
Was
you
he?
go.
Uh-huh.
Yes, as well as a professor.
Oh.
And
that's
now,
what- well,
now a historian.
Oh, yeah. Francis has his doctorate in historical theology, but he prefers to teach in a high school level,
Nice.
because he said he feels like he can still be a little bit of an influence on the students,
Uh-huh, sure.
Whereas in college, they're gone.
They're already gone by college?
They're gone, yeah. So he just struggles along, financially, that is, but he enjoys it, he likes that. Yeah, so that's.
Don't we all
Francis.
struggle along?
There.
So,
No, we got off the subject
track.
of, yeah.
That's right.
is there
Okay.
anything else?
Now, how?
Now, did you finish what you had there? All the
No,
stuff
I
that you
was just
wanted?
gonna tell you,
Let me get
this
some of the
is some of the
facts.
research that Francis had done.
Okay.
for our
I'd
family
love to hear some of that.
Tree, okay.
We're gonna wrap it up soon though, okay?
Okay,
Because
yeah,
I know
actually-
Aunt Mary's gotta go have
Yeah.
her dinner.
No, I have to go.
Oh, I thought you had to leave at 5:30. Oh, okay, you're fine.
I've got stuff to eat in the refrigerator.
Oh, okay,
Actually, starting with your great-grandmother,
okay.
um,
What was her name?
Mother.
Timari, we used to call her.
What was her name?
Timari,
Uh,
Aunt Mary. I mean, people used to call her that,
Uh-huh.
but she was,
Yeah, she was our nana.
she was our nana. and her name was Maimon. She was a Maimon. And she was born in, let's see, where was she born? She was born in Capizzi, Italy.
Capizzi.
Yeah.
Is that in Sicily?
Yeah.
It is. So everyone is really from
That's
Sicily,
where,
right?
That's where Mom was born, but
Capuzzi,
she.
he has it here.
But when I
Capizzi.
said Palermo, I think her grandmother lived. My mother's grandmother lived in Palermo, and she lived with her grandmother for many years when she was before she came to America. Yeah.
Yeah, and she used to, I think she worked in a sewing factory too, Grandma.
Our grandma, yeah.
Yeah, and then she, in her later life, she used to make the meatballs and the sauce for Bucky's restaurant.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
she used to
Yeah.
make them at home, and then my Uncle Frank would take them, you know, to, and we used to go down there and try, and my grandfather used to steal meatballs for us, and she'd get all mad, she'd say, they're counted, you can't do that, you know, but my grandfather he was a devil. He was another devil. Now, my grandfather, who was Paul Di Blanco,
Right.
Paul Di Blanco, he was also born in Capizzi, Italy, because they came here as a married couple. And he was born, I don't know when he was born, but he came over in 1909.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's when he arrived in the United States, okay? And then they had 4 children. It was Frank, who was called Bartolomeo. right? Bartolomeo. That was Frank. And Tony, who was called Antonio, right? And Josephine, who was called Giuseppina, she came. And my mother, who was Anna. So they were all the Di Blancos.
Right.
And of course, you know that Uncle Frank Di Blanco. Oh, and I did tell you about my father. Did I tell you about him? He was, where was he born? Raccomonte, you told him that already.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we know about my father. And my father made several trips here. He arrived one time in 1904. Then he arrived another time in 1909.
Yeah, he went back because he was sick.
Right, and then he arrived again in 1910, and that was his last trip back from Italy. I think he made 2 trips there, but he loved the United States, he really did. And he said he never wanted to go back to Italy, ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, he just loved the United
Why
States.
didn't he like Italy?
I guess they were poor, you know, and they had nothing. I guess
I don't think he had a happy home life
I don't
because
think
he
so.
never talked about his brothers, his mother, his father, or anything. All I know is that every once in a while I would grasp a little bit of information. I know they had what I call a cantina, and he had to work there, and that he was one of the twins, and the mother had 13 children. But he never talked about his mother, never talked about his father, never talked about anybody, although he did twice send money over to one of his brothers to come over to the United States, but he never did.
Yeah, we didn't ask, you know, because we were raised where, you know, you
Right.
talk when you're spoken to.
Right, right.
Yeah, so we never asked him about it.
No,
What was he like?
My father, he was a tyrant, I think.
he was
Yeah,
what?
a tyrant. You know,
Yes.
he was the boss and that was it.
Yeah.
And
But he never was nasty
No
or
abuse.
mean. I mean, he never beat us or never, but he was boss. What
Yeah,
he
he was
said
boss.
was,
in other words, he just had to look at you. If he
Yeah.
didn't like what you said, and that was it. You never went further than that.
never raised a hand, just looked at you.
No.
And if he yelled at you, you would hope he'd hit you instead of yelling at you.
Oh,
because
really? Big mouth, huh?
His mouth was worse than his,
My mother hit me one time with like a thin pipe.
Ooh.
I guess it was a rubberized pipe, because I was out after dark when she had told me to come home,
Ooh.
you know, early. And when I saw her with this rubber pipe, you know, I started running away from her, and I ran underneath the bureau in the dining room, and she's down here smacking me with this thing. That's the only time I ever remember being hit by her. But
Yeah.
I never stayed out after dark after that.
Yeah.
I never was hit or smacked by anybody except my mother once. And she got me in the back because I was running away from her. And however she hit me, it cracked her wedding ring and it flew off.
Whoa.
So I turned around and I said, "See, you should not have done that."
Karma, baby.
Yeah.
Karma.
And she never raised a hand after that. Never. Well, I never remember being spanked or anything.
And we didn't
Really?
have a lot of affection from our parents. You know, they weren't the kind that would tell you they loved you, or that they would kiss you and hug you and do things like that, you know. But they did the best they could, I think. Yeah.
Yes, there was affection there, but they didn't show it.
Right.
Ironically, they showed up with so much love and affection, right?
Yeah.
Inside of the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how's that, Joey? That about wraps it up or what?